affordable and accessible education. And then we also advocate for student rights, and we also champion for governance and leadership among students in Africa. The All Africa Students Union is proud to have been at the forefront in the fight against colonialism in the 1950s. Students are the ones who came together, and stood at the forefront in that, and that is how the All Africa Students Union was born later after countries got independence. And it was seen as a network to bring young students together to make for change, and that is what we have been carrying all along. And now as we champion education, and we champion student advocacy and student rights, governance and leadership, we also advocate for education that can be accessed by the millions of students that are across Africa. And I am glad to partner. We have various partners. Our headquarters are in Accra, Ghana. I am currently in Kenya, working from home, and we have partners. The European Students Union is a very big partner. We have the 100 million campaign, that is a big partner. The Secretary General, I believe, has also made quite some few inputs with the global campaign for education, and we are proud to be steering not just grassroots African students, but global students across the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Angel. And next up is Jasmine from El Salvador.
Hola, buenos días a todas y todos los que están, bueno, en este momento. Creo que es importante la unificación estudiantil y juvenil que puede existir tanto a nivel regional como global. Creo que es una gran oportunidad para reconocernos y ver de que las luchas sociales, las luchas colectivas que nosotros y nosotras podamos crear sean para un bien común y para nuestras sociedades en general. Soy estudiante de periodismo de la Universidad de El Salvador. Prácticamente es la única universidad pública de El Salvador. Creo que ese es un gran honor al que yo puedo acudir, ya que toda mi vida he estado en el sistema público estudiantil. Creo que eso también da el espacio para darle voz a todas aquellas y aquellos niños y niñas que han sufrido, quieras o no, las deficiencias en el nivel educativo, y creo que esta es una gran oportunidad como región para entablar la discusión de qué queremos como educación, hacia dónde vamos, y también a nivel mundial cuáles serían las recomendaciones y opciones para la unificación juvenil y estudiantil a favor de los derechos humanos de todas y todos. Un saludo y un gran abrazo desde Latinoamérica. Yo creo que nosotras y nosotros creemos que es importante el derecho humano a esta, y bueno, esta es una oportunidad más para debatir y conversar. Saludos.
Muchas gracias, Jasmine. I think there are some problems with the translation going from Spanish to English, so we'll have a look at that and make sure that it works for your next intervention. But before that, we'll just move along with the rest of the panelists. And next up is Rantia from Palestine.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm honored to be here today. My name is Rantia Sabbah. I'm a Palestinian counselor, graduated with a psychology major, double minor in sociology and women's studies, currently training as to be a professional psychologist in Palestine, and currently in pursuit for my master's degree in children and adolescent mental health program. Today here, I'm going to be sharing my perspective from my experience as a young female Palestinian in the Arab region and taking Palestine as an example. For us in the Arab region in general, we were already living in a pandemic. In the past years, the Arab region has suffered from different kind of crises and conflicts, resulting in a heavy militarized environment with constantly being in an emergency state. Affecting and impacting the daily lives of the Arab population in the region and resulting in the constant violation of human rights and freedom. So when we talk about the right to education here and the right to movement and the right to play, how can we really measure it in the Arab region? Is it even possible to use the same measurement that we would use in Sweden to be applied in the same measurement in Syria, Iraq, Yemen? When we are under constant violations and violence from all its shades, what can be safe for us? Or more like what it's violent for us. Add to it, what if you are a female in this environment with a systemic oppressive society? Today, I'll be trying to cover these questions from my own personal perspective as an Arab youth activist and education advocate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rantia. And next up is Sunil from ASPE.
Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Thank you for inviting for this important discussion today. My name is Sunil Gangavne. I work with Asia South Pacific Association for Adult and Basic Education. I coordinate SBA's Youth Engagement Program, which includes overseeing SBA's youth-led action research involving youth leaders from marginalized communities. So we have this program collaborated in different countries: India, Indonesia, Philippines, Timor-Leste, Vanuatu, Nepal, and Mongolia. Something about ASBE: it's a regional network of more than 200 civil society organizations and individuals, which is operating in around 30 countries of the Asia Pacific region. Basically, ASBE works towards promoting the right to quality education and transformative and liberative lifelong adult education and learning for all. Through our work, ASBE lobbies with governments to uphold education as an empowering tool to combat poverty and all forms of exclusion and discrimination. We want to enable active and meaningful participation in governance and build a culture of peace and international understanding. I have done my master's in psychology, and I'm a passionate facilitator and works towards gender equity, masculinities, and youth work. My specific interest areas are participatory action research, which is I'm focusing in my recent work, and have been conducting and coordinating youth-led action research studies across the region. So today, with my colleague Kajal, we will be sharing our insights from youth-led action research, which were done before pandemic and also during pandemic. And I hope we can learn together and share best practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then for our final panelist, Kajal, also from India.
Yes. Hi and hello everyone. I'm Kajal from India. I work in an organization based in Maharashtra state of India named Advocacy Media for Development. Abhivyakti believes that everyone has the right to tell their story and everyone's stories should get heard. So with this objective, Abhivyakti is working to strengthen the voices of marginalized groups from different parts of North Maharashtra. So we have been trying to strengthen the voices of the people from margins who don't have access to the platforms to represent themselves since last 33 years. I'm working as a program leader of girl-led youth action research, where we call them Shodhini, which means female researchers, female seekers in a regional language. So these girls does research on girls' education, livelihood, voice and rights of the girls, and also work for advocacy and actions in their local communities. So yes, me and my colleagues, Sunil, would like to share some insights from this youth action research in India and some other countries as well. And we would like to represent those voices here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kajal. And then we'll move on to the first question, which is, how have you witnessed girls being impacted in your community during this COVID-19 pandemic? And we'll start off in the same order as we did in introductions. So if Martina, if you can please go ahead.
Thank you. So there were many impacts that we have seen from the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'll start off by the most direct impact this has had on women working and even studying in healthcare. In Europe, I say this because in Europe, 78% of our healthcare workers are women. And they are on our nation's front lines. It's not only them, but it's also teachers and women working within the hospitality industry. In many EU countries, we saw the support of these people fulfilling essential roles was not sufficient enough. Many of them lacked proper access to personal protective equipment. Many were not prioritized in order to access testing and treatment, as well as they did not have adequate compensation for their work. They continue to face these challenges as the pandemic goes on, and we can see the consequences of this being imposed now onto their families. So I would like to start off with that being the most prominent impact. Of course, then we have seen another very alarming rate of increase of domestic violence. It's increased by about a third in some EU countries following the lockdown. This was then also aggravated by the fact that violence protection houses and shelters were either forced to close or reduce significantly the number of places available for victims. And also they had to face the consequences of having limited resources to operate. Also, and another impact that we have seen, and this is another worrying part of Europe, is that once the EU and most of Europe closed down its borders, this really impacted a lot of people seeking asylum within Europe. Unfortunately, we've seen that right now commercial travel is picking up according to safety regulations, but on the other hand, Europe is failing to live up to its responsibilities and international obligations to protect the lives and even the dignity of people migrating through very dangerous routes to seek asylum and opportunity in our countries. We cannot ignore that this is putting extreme social distress on many young migrants and refugees, particularly girls who have had their lives uprooted and their education put on hold.
Thank you so much, Martina, for sharing those perspectives. And next is Angel.
Yes, from what I have seen from my experience with the pandemic is that the issue of reproductive health services has been an issue that we have seen quite not prioritized in this era. And from where I sit, knowing how the situation has been dealt with is by preparing, which we were not alerted before this pandemic. But again, on this other side, we also felt that because other countries were hit first, before it got here, we had time to at least take some few measures that would at least shield us a little bit from the shock. But anyway, we didn't escape some of these other things, and things like reproductive health services. So when during the lockdown, there are maternal health services that are needed, and you can't travel out of your home. It became chaotic. We saw a lot of police brutality because they wanted to enforce those lockdowns. We even lost people enforcing lockdown measures that really didn't make sense, really annoyed most of the human rights community. It was not necessary. Or police harassing citizens if they're not wearing masks, and then that became an issue altogether. It gave birth to the issue of the pandemic, gave birth to other small issues that could have really been avoided nevertheless. But again, on the issue of reproductive health services was quite something that we needed to champion and ask the government to also put that in place, because if we lock down a country, we have girls who make their living just from going to the market, doing one or two things here, earning for the day, and now that is not there anymore. So where do they get their sanitary towels? How do they take care of themselves? I mean, as a girl child in that context, that became very difficult for that community, and for girls in that space. And in Accra, Ghana, they have that became an issue because they earn from the market, they earn from the day, and now the market is closed. That became an issue that had to be addressed, and that was quite a shock for us to see how so many girls was supposed to be in school are just in the market, and that is how they earn their daily bread from. That was quite sad to see as well. That really the issue of the pandemic is that it magnified the issues that we had. Now we could see them at a larger scale, and we could actually see exactly how it was hitting us hitting us badly. And then the other thing that also looked like a similar pandemic, more of an epidemic, is in teenage pregnancies. And this is something we are just reading about, as viewing on TV every other time, that between January and now, which is about 8 months, there have been quite a spike, a huge, more than twice as much as it is as it was last year. And this is something that we are seeing as a result of this. And then if you're going to have teenage pregnancies, and I am here advocating for young girls to get into political spaces, get into governance, we all need to be empowered first before we can get into those spaces. So we are losing a generation. And if we don't find mitigation measures to bring this down, might find ourselves in a hurdle in the coming years. And then the other thing was on gender-based violence. And this is something I look at it in a large scale, I mean, broadly and in depth, in that now we have the issue with jobs. We've lost jobs, economies were almost collapsing. People got fired, companies had to lay off workers. Where do you go? You go home, you don't go to social places, you don't go to work, you don't go anywhere, you're at home. So confining a family at home with no work and with no social, with nowhere to let out yourself, then that really brings about the gender-based violence, because it was twice as much as we've had it before. And then that really brought us into a shock as a country, because now if this is happening, it is because of issues to do with mental health. So now we have another issue. Mental health now needs to be addressed. It needs to be a matter of concern for governments. We need to, as from where I sit, we are advocating for governments to invest more in the mental health aspect, in health, not just these other things that we deal with, but mental health is now becoming more important as we go by the day. So these are some of the things I saw from my perspective. And later on in the conversation, we're going to delve into how, as the All Africa Students Union, have picked on some of the items as we unpack them, as we move along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Angel. And next is Rante.
Hi. So I'm going to start with the background on the environment in Palestine. The Palestinian society and its political environment is built on lockdowns. Every 2 kilometers, there's a checkpoint. So the right to movement as a definition for Palestinians is absent from the mindset. As one of the teachers in a school near an illegal settlement has said, the whole staff at the start of the lockdown during COVID-19 pandemic, including the students, are always on alert mood. We're always ready to evacuate the school if the settlers are about to attack. So during the pandemic and after the national lockdown, we didn't really feel any change, as if now we are ready to evacuate from COVID-19 and the settlers. So this has given us a show, and it shows us that the political environment in Palestine is always on alert from the beginning. But for many females in the Arab region, the daily routine is spent either in school or at home. So extracurricular activities are rare in the community for young females, unlike young males. The ability to freely leave the house for different activities, especially for female teenagers, is almost none. So school is the only way for many females to participate socially with their other peers and interact and get their right to play, leading to, with the pandemic, that led to an increased fixation to gender roles within the household and decrease of the quality of their education. Thus, the COVID-19 psychological effect had a deeper impact on girls and youth, and in my opinion, more than anyone can ever guess or try to measure it. These effects have doubled and were deeper due to the schools being shut down. The education system in the Arab region, as much as it needs improvement and enhancement, but it's considered as a safe haven for many children. It's a space where there are many utilities available and easily accessed, and they lack back home, such as constant electricity, internet, and technological tools. The safe space the school held for children also included the assurance of their education's quality. It gave an equal opportunity for all children to receive an equal and an education of quality. And if there were students with learning disabilities or special needs, then this extra care that the teachers and their parents used to be able to give them comfortably has definitely decreased by now, and tremendously were affected. But also in schools, the females are heard, pushed, and believed in. Back home, it can be the opposite to many factors, such as political, social, and economic factors. For females, the quality of it, specifically for the children living in poverty and in violent household or around near conflicted area, the effect were tremendous. So there's a fear now of forcing females out of the school with an excuse of the quality of the education during the COVID. and which may result to an increase of early marriages between young girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next is Jasmine. Jasmine, are you able to hear us? Okay, we'll just move ahead with.
Sí,
Okay.
en el caso de El Salvador, en el 2020 prácticamente el COVID ha sido un factor más para la vulneración de derechos humanos, tanto a niñez, adolescencias y juventudes. Por lo menos en el caso de El Salvador, el reporte de las Juntas de Protección del Consejo Nacional de la Niñez y Adolescencia reportan que en los primeros 6 meses del año, de enero a junio, se reportaron más de 5.000 presuntos casos de víctimas de amenaza por vulneración de derechos humanos. Eso ya nos da un parámetro de la situación en la que nos encontramos y del accionar que deben de tener los funcionarios públicos respecto al goce y velar por el derecho humano, tanto para niñez, adolescencia y juventudes. De esto es interesante que un 62%, más de la mitad de estos casos, han sido a niñas y adolescentes. Y tal cual como mencionaban, el problema de estar en confinamientos en nuestros hogares hace de que la violencia pueda ser más propensa a niñas, a mujeres en este caso. También el problema de la violencia sexual, que actualmente es un tema que a región es alarmante y que de hecho esa es una de las luchas colectivas que se tiene en este momento, ya que se reportan a diario personas, mujeres en este caso desaparecidas, de los cuales no se tiene ningún seguimiento por parte de los grupos de seguridad que los estados deberían de garantizar en ese sentido. Y en periodo de cuarentena, yo creo que los niveles han sido mucho más altos. Por otra parte, por lo menos en el sistema de salud público del país, de El Salvador, se registraron 258 casos de embarazos de niñas y adolescentes. Eso también debería de alertarnos porque significa que las niñas y adolescentes que están saliendo embarazadas no tienen el acceso a la salud para que tanto ellas como sus hijos, hijas, puedan tener la atención necesaria y que de hecho no todas van por la misma situación de violencia que pueden haber en sus hogares. Y esto hace que al no haber registros exactos, al no tener el número de niñas que necesitan atención, tanto de salud, psicológica en este caso, o darle un seguimiento a la vulneración de derechos que tenga, hace que los niveles de impunidad incrementen y que se exacerba y se agudice este problema. Tanto el silencio de mujeres por acallar este tipo de vulneraciones hace de que las niñas lo acepten como tal y digan, mejor no digo nada, porque al final no me dan ninguna respuesta y no tengo el respaldo por parte de las personas que deben de protegerme. Otra cosa que también me parece importante destacar en ese momento es que según el Fondo de Población de las Naciones Unidas ha dicho que debido al confinamiento, al menos más de 53.000 mujeres no tuvieron acceso a métodos anticonceptivos. Eso también me parece alarmante porque eso no significa que solo esté pasando en la región centroamericana, sino que en gran parte de Occidente, en muchos países de Occidente, Latinoamérica, Caribe, se han visto con esta problemática y que al menos se tiene una estimación a finales de año que haya más de 11.000 embarazos no deseados. Sabemos de que las garantías hacia las mujeres, niñas, adolescentes no son muy viables para todas, para que velen ellas por el derecho a su salud, por el derecho a su sexualidad. Entonces, esto también me parece un inconveniente grave que todas y todos tenemos que tener en el reloj y decir, bueno, algo está sucediendo, necesitamos soluciones verdaderas para que esto no solo pase a nivel de región, sino que a nivel mundial esto puede erradicarse.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. And we'll move on to Sunil.
Thank you. Violence against women and girls in India is widespread. Uh, it takes place in both public and private spheres. The homes, which are supposed to be safest spaces in our reality for everyone, in reality have become very insecure places for girls and women in the communities. Pandemic and lockdown, in fact, exaggerated the situation. There have been increase in reported violence against children, girls, and women in many communities in my country. Even before pandemic, many women experience discrimination and violence in their everyday lives. It is often underreported as a result of systemic and social barriers, and the formal mechanism to address it remain ineffective. Because when we understand the patriarchy is also interconnected with the class and caste structures in India. So it becomes most marginalized women to even come ahead and report their cases. For example, women from Dalit, Adivasi, and other marginalized and minority communities are largely affected by different forms of violence, and their marginalization narrows their avenues to access justice. And that is why they have become the most marginalized and most oppressed group of communities, which whose voices are needs to be heard and represented. I'll request my colleague Kajal to share some of the insights and stories which were recorded by young women who are living in the villages, where they conducted short case studies and research studies using participatory action research.
Thank you,
Yes.
Sunil. And then Kajal?
Hi. Yes, talking about the rural and marginalized group of young girls, there was a huge impact of this pandemic on girls' education. Schools have been closed since the month of March, and girls who were fighting to stay in the school or to stay in the formal education had to get drop out and start working on daily wages to earn money in order to support their families. So, although there are options like online education, but the online thing is not accessible and not affordable to all. So hence, it excludes people from the margins. In India and most of the Asian countries, I think it is not only about the digital divide, but it has the connection with the patriarchal stereotype in which use of mobile phone by girls is a big taboo. So therefore, the online education does not include girls. It also has impact on the livelihood opportunities available for girls in the villages and in the rural communities. Already there are very less opportunities which girls can access and can grab that. But because of this pandemic and all the reverse migration happened in early stages of lockdown in India, the available job opportunities are then grabbed by men and boys in the communities, and girls are again thrown off to the unpaid and domestic work. And those girls who were doing jobs away from their homes, away from their villages, had to return to their homes, and they are not, they are, or they will be again pushed into the early marriages or child marriages as well. As the schools and Anganwadis are closed, Anganwadi is a rural child care center, child care system in India. It also impacted on the nutrition level of girls. As the schools and Anganwadis used to provide some supplementary nutrition, health checkups, and basic healthcare facilities, therefore it had huge impact on nutrition level, and also the healthcare facilities faced limitations in pandemic, and it affected on the availability of healthcare to girls, as the girls' health is not seen as priority at like any time. So there were superstitions in my community as well about COVID-19, and to control this spread, girls used to have fast for a day in every week, and that definitely affected their physical health. I would like to end by just bringing in the most prominent impact of lockdown. That was there was a huge increase in child and early marriages of girls in India and most of the Asian countries. Indian government especially had given permission to have marriage ceremonies with 50 people attending it, and it created an opportunity for parents to just marry off their daughters as the cost of the marriage decreased rapidly. So because of it, a lot of girls had to get drop out from education, had to get drop out or had to leave their jobs, and they had to to compromise their dreams and aspirations. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kajal, for sharing, and thank you all. I think it's very interesting to hear your perspectives, and it's very clear how alarming and also concerning the situation is all over the world. But I think it's also strikes me that there are so many similarities in what we're all facing now, and that we're all facing some of the same threats in regards to setbacks on the rights of girls and women, but also in going back to the old and traditional gender roles, and that progress that has been made over the last decades are crumbling apart, or that we need to really step up and fight for it. And we also see that the space for civil society and human rights, it has been shrinking for quite a long time already, but now it's becoming even more narrow to navigate within. And I think it's interesting to hear all of the problems and all of the challenges that we need to tackle, but I'm very interested in hearing more about how we can solve them, and also in hearing what you're doing locally in your work to address these challenges, and how youth can be part of the change that we need to see in moving forward. So I think now we'll do the round in a reversed order. So we'll start with Kajal and then we'll end with Martina. So Kajal, please go ahead.
Yes. So you're asking about the violence and how we can stop it, no? Hi, Dee. So you're asking about the violence in communities and in schools. Am I right?
Kajal,
Am I audible?
Kajal, are you
Hello?
able to speak louder and also a bit more slower?
Am I audible now? Can you hear me?
Yes, Kajal, we can hear you.
Okay, yes. Talking about the violence in schools and communities, we all know that in all over the world, girls are blamed for violence happens with them. But in India and Asian countries, girls are not only blamed, but they are punished if they suffer violence. So violence is the major reason due to which girls drop out of the formal education, that is from school and colleges or any institute. They do not get access to the non-traditional livelihood opportunities. Instead, they get married at early age and many times without their consent. From the girl-led action research we did in India, we learned that 27% of girls say that such types of violence happen when the girls are traveling to school or to job. There are no functional toilets, street lights, safe transportation system for girls, and most of the cases of violence happens there. From our research, we found out that only 13% girls said that they reported the cases of violence experienced by them. But the researcher girls who were the insiders further clarified that they do not report the violence cases to police station or to women's cell or any other governmental or non-governmental system for violence redressal. Instead, they prefer to talk it in their families and sometimes among their peers. So most of the times, the case is suppressed by the family and to protect the families, especially the father's honor. Therefore, the remaining 80%, 87% girls do not report about it because they do not have information and knowledge of the reporting system. It is not only about the girls. We need to see it from the intersectional approach. I think like girls are being harassed, but girls from rural communities, girls from Dalit communities, poor girls, or the girls from minority communities are harassed by men from superior settings. Therefore, to address and to solve and prevent and protect girls, we need to see violence from an intersectional approach. And at a local level, we need to appoint, like from our research, there was a recommendation to appoint a women police officer in every village or in every province, in every community. We also need to sensitize the systems of structures of reporting violence, addressing and acting on the violence. So there is a strong need to sensitize men and boys as well, and to have them as a partners in preventing violence. I would like to end with a last recommendation that girls should do safety audits of their schools or communities to identify and highlight the spaces and causes of the violence and take actions to stop it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kajal. And I will just repeat the question in case some of you have forgotten what I asked about. So what I want you to respond on now is what needs to be done to address the issues that you're facing, and also how are you and youth in your country working to create change. So let's move on to hear Sunil.
Thank you. Echoing what Kajal has been sharing about the several incidents of violence and cases which is happening with the underprivileged and minority young girls who are living with different intersectional barriers. What needs to be done is one of the thread which I'm pulling is needs to be the safety social audits done by young girls are important, where the the actual situation has been documented by the rural girls, and then they can come together to ask for new questions and provide solutions which can be taken ahead with the help of different stakeholders. It can be local level rural council, it can be other judicial system, and also the government representative along with CSOs. There has been many initiatives taken in my community and in country, which ranges through from volunteerism and students movement, and they have been raising their concerns and demands time to time. They ask questions and demand free, quality, and safe education for all. What we need to do is we need to support and safeguard this kind of movements, and uh, and sustain this kind of uh, democratic spaces where we can come together and ask and rally for our rights. uh, there has been different groups who are mobilizing young girls and boys and training and building their capacities and perspectives, uh, engaging them in training, uh, online and offline. I think these are the spaces where young minds get an opportunity to talk to each other, create a shared learning spaces, and also these are the time when their perspectives are molded, and they can look at the world from more respectful and equity based lens. So these are very important spaces which we need to be sustained in either in CSOs or in a voluntary spaces. Apart from this, there has been a group who are running independent online media platforms where the young people write their stories, they produce videos, audios, podcast, which needs to be circulated and shared, and that also gives them an agency to document their stories. That also gives them opportunity and a platform where they can ask and demand for their rights, and those voices are needs to be safeguarded. At ASPE, I was talking about youth-led action research. We are also trying to create spaces where the agency and leadership lies with young people, and especially with the people who are living in the margins. As Kajal was talking, we need to bring young people in the Asia Pacific region together to share their knowledge, what they already have from their indigenous experiential learning systems, but also build upon this from lifelong learning perspective, how we can harness and nurture this talent and potentials. That is very, very important. I feel those are the spaces which needs to be nurtured and given to the young people, where they can lead and they design the way they want. So participatory action, youth-led action research is one of the strategy, one of the innovative strategy, but we need to think about different strategies where young people have a right to decide their agenda and the design of their programs, because that is how we can get new insights and perspectives to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunil. And Rantia is next.
I'm going to try to answer the question as much as possible by starting with what education in general it means to us and connecting it to violence. Education is a safe space to many girls, like we said. It's not only an academic and informative sector for children, it's a whole space that children can run to. And this is what was missing during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is the safe space for many children under constant political and domestic psychological violence. It was not only missed, but it was needed the most. What happened in the period of lockdowns during the COVID-19 is that it unraveled many problematic approaches that society is holding on to and the different shades of violence the community is dealing with. So how can you tell a young female teenager to focus on her studies and put the same exact effort in the household that lacks the basics? And when I say the basics, I mean as basic as a bed, as a place to study, as a quiet space. So violence in the Arab world is not a linear definition. Girls at a young age are exposed to brutal scenes of direct and indirect violence, either from society and the oppressive system or the systematic violation of basic human rights on a daily basis. Militarization is mainly led by men in the Arab region, which increases the patriarchy, leading to internalized and systemized bullying, specifically against females. One approach of these violences is silencing dialogue, thus having an environment that normalizes the existence of constant violence. This results in a major shift of the mindset and the view of the world and your own personal life as a child since you were a kid. So COVID-19 has unraveled the viciousness of our reality, that this is normal, feeling that there is always going to be something that's going to be missed, stolen from you, or you need to be careful of or run from your own reality. So we live in scarcity. We always feel that this something will be stolen from us, violated, or even a feeling of unworthiness of basic human rights, right to movement, right to play, right to education. For us, these rights cannot be divided. They are holistic and intertwined. And when we lose our right to movement, we automatically lose our right to play, to education, and vice versa. So for girls specifically who are under domestic violence, for example, are constantly living in this kind of violence and in different levels of violence. And just because they're girls, this is the first reason, and then because they're Arabs living in a very systematic, oppressive society. So what we need now is community-based advocacy, which is a lot of youth are doing right now and during the pandemic from different kind of sectors, from education to mental health especially, and taking social media as a platform for them, and using these platforms to emphasize on the importance of ending the GBV, gender-based violence. What we need is also, and what we discovered and realized, that we need extreme focus on the curriculum that we are using in our ministries and within our school system. We need it to reflect civic values and to be cross-cutting. And we have to ensure that the education policies regarding gender, inclusion, equity are always in place. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Rantia. And Jasmine, you're next.
Sí, en el caso de la región latinoamericana, en el caso de El Salvador, yo creo que el tema de la violencia en centros escolares ha sido más que todo por la fuerte militarización y represión por parte del cuerpo de seguridad. Creo que esta es una realidad en la que muchos países vivimos en este contexto no muy agradable, porque el proceso educativo hace de que sea mínimo y el interés de seguir estudiando, de niñas, niños, seguir estudiando se reduce. También yo creo que uno de los factores que ha estado afectando en estos últimos años ha sido el hecho de la desaparición forzada en adolescentes, niñas, niños, quizás dirigiéndose a sus centros escolares, en sus barrios, en sus comunidades. Creo que esta es una temática que se está dejando de lado y que no debería de silenciarse. Solo quizás por mencionar, en estos meses y aún cuando las escuelas han seguido impartiendo sus clases de forma virtual, Se han reportado 58 feminicidios en El Salvador. Creo que eso ya te da un índice o un dato de, bueno, que realmente se está haciendo para proteger las vidas de estas niñas y adolescentes que están en el escolar. Solo quizás también mencionar, y que no quisiera dejar de lado, hace 6 días atrás la Fiscalía General de la República hizo el reporte de 4 niñas desaparecidas en el escolar: Evelyn Guadalupe, 13 años, Ingrid Abigail Sermán, de 15 años, Kenia Lizeth Segovia, de 14 años, Grady Lizeth Muñoz, de 15 años. Yo creo que el nombre de estas niñas no tiene que quedar en el silencio, no tiene que quedar impune cada uno de los casos, el seguimiento que tiene que dársele, porque son niñas que estaban la semana pasada, por decirlo así, y puede sonar muy crudo, estaban la semana pasada con sus familias, con sus padres, con sus amigos, y ahora ya no están, y van a abandonar esa oportunidad, esa esperanza de seguir forjándose en los estudios, y no son las únicas. Creo que esto debería de llamarnos muchísimo la atención. No solo pasa en El Salvador. Creo que la represión estudiantil que se sufre no solo va desde ese nivel, sino que también hay casos controversiales. En el caso de Colombia, la represión estudiantil que han sufrido por el hecho de exigir el derecho a la educación como tal debería de ponernos en el radar. También el caso de Chile, la vulneración a los diversos derechos que los estudiantes han estado recibiendo dentro de sus centros escolares, hace pensar y replantearnos cuáles son las medidas necesarias para que el derecho a la educación siga garantizándose. Porque ya mencionaban, es cierto que las escuelas pueden considerarse un lugar donde niñas, niños, adolescentes pueden liberarse, pueden salir, pueden soñar, pueden crecer, de hecho, y aspirar a más. Pero si existen todos estos factores que lo bloquean, significa, bueno, entonces, ¿para qué me está sirviendo la educación? Eso por una parte. Bueno, también el tema de la violencia social, en el caso de El Salvador, más de 824 casos se han reportado de desaparición forzada. Esto es actual en los últimos meses, y de los cuales estos 295 han sido niñas, adolescentes y jóvenes, y no se tiene una respuesta ni seguimiento por parte de las autoridades para con sus familias. Y bueno, el hecho de que el número de asesinatos se reduzca, sabemos de que los cambios de gobierno también son muy indispensables como para proponer políticas públicas que favorezcan a este sector. Por mucho que se diga que la violencia se ha reducido, no es así, porque cambian los antecedentes, cambian las formas de violentar, en este caso a menor número de asesinatos, por lo menos en la situación salvadoreña, menor número de asesinatos, mayor el número de desaparición forzada. Y no solo a niñas y adolescentes, sino que esto va a nivel genérico de todas aquellas personas que estén en el sistema público. Quizás también mencionar de que el miedo por el hecho de ser niña, creo que esto salió en uno de los debates que hemos estado realizando como región, en los conversatorios estudiantiles, salió el debate de que el miedo siempre está inmerso por el hecho de ser mujer, ser adolescente, y no importa si estás dentro del sistema educativo, al final dentro de estos sectores también encuentras vulneración de derechos, vulneración por parte de personas que te acosan sexualmente, el miedo de no volver a tu casa, el miedo de andar sola en cualquier calle, ya sea de la ciudad, urbano, rural, hace de que nos replanteemos el hecho de que si las políticas están funcionando. Y también aquí el velar porque los estados garanticen que estas políticas funcionen y que las medidas, las personas que están encargadas del sistema de seguridad realmente funcionen a favor de las personas, a favor de la sociedad, y no solo para beneficio propio o de las personas que están al poder.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Next is Angel.
All right. I was listening to I'm following the conversation, and when we mention when Rantia mentioned education and school being a safe space, well, I think I can attest to that because I am a product of going to school, and that is where I have been able to network. That's where I've been able to come together with other like-minded students who are aggressive, focused, and the sky is the limit. The narrative with young people in pushing for progress is quite exciting. It is a form of peer pressure that is on the positive side. So when we are not in school, that really takes away all of that, because I have grown from an education space. I have grown from being very active in political student unions at the university, and that has really opened up my eyes to seeing most of the things that I would not have seen if I had not gone through school. So when someone misses out on school, we look at it economically, and this is something that is now becoming a narrative very popular with young people. And we are now seeing, because of the economy coming down, we are seeing young people with very high qualifications not having work, and not being employed, and not being able to sustain a life that they have always desired, because we've always been championing that education is the key to success. So maybe we also need to define this success, because it is a success of the mind. It is not necessarily tied to the economics of it, although it could lead to that as well, which is something we now need to open up more spaces for young people for employment and all that. So that is a challenge I'm facing with young people when I'm going to advocate for education. And now that we are now looking at the solutions, one of the things I like about education is that both girls and boys get to compete at the same level. In education, gender balance the drift is not that big, because you can see top students girls, top student boys. We are now pushing more of girls to go into STEM and all that, which is quite encouraging. And now we are also seeing some limelight in that. So education is quite something that we can never ignore, and that young people are now losing confidence in because of the employment sector. And then the other thing I would that we are working on, because now that we are looking at a pandemic and we are about to open schools and try to push things back to normal, and we are seeing the girls, like in Kenya, we had a huge increase in the number of teenage pregnancies. And an NGO reported that there was almost a 30% increase in teenage pregnancies in one county, one region in Kenya. And the government even started claiming that those numbers were not real, because they couldn't believe that that was happening. And now, it makes the government look bad, and it has to defend itself, meaning that something is happening, because we know someone who has gone into that situation. So the All Africa Students Union is championing the Girls Back to School campaign, which we have partnered with the UNESCO and the 100 million campaign to push girls back to school. No matter what the situation, we still have to go back to school. It is a slip and it is not a fall. So this is something that we are championing across the continent, to encourage our girls to go back to school, to use that advocacy, our platforms, and platforms like these ones that we are having right now, that I'm asking you, if you want to join the campaign, please feel free, join in, content, let's share. That's why we are meeting here. And Sunil said that young people need to connect, partner, and make the world a better place. And I feel that is our mandate at this time. And that is one of the reasons why we are having these conversations. And Girls Back to School campaign is something that we want to see getting into the limelight, asking girls to go back to school and still shed more importance. And this is by storytelling, telling stories about how education has worked for you, and why education is important. We know that education is important, but as much as we know, we still need to be reminded. As young people, we are quick to forgetting. And then the other thing I am championing in my country at the moment is political participation of women. One thing that COVID-19 has shown us is that the people whom we elect to power determine everything. This, as Rantia said, it shows us the real issues that we've been facing and overlooking all this time. And political participation is something that young women, we need to rethink. We need to push, we need to stop leaving our country to the dogs, we need to stop leaving our country to the bad guys, and then sit here and talk about how we are trying to do this and that, and it's not working. And then when we talk about the police are, when we talk about rape and gender-based violence, and then you need to go and report, where do you go to report? You go to a police station. Who do you find? Male police officers who don't give up, who don't care, and you know, in a patriarchal society, hitting a woman is thought to be okay. I mean, you're disciplining your wife, she's part of your property. So when you go to another police officer to report the same thing, then you're just making yourself look like a laughing stock. And that these are countless encounters women are facing in our police stations. And then if we look at political participation more clearly, we get into the military, who appoints the chief military officers, who appoints judges, where we'll take our cases to be listened to, who will appoint legislators, who will advocate for our issues. It all boils down to politics, and that is one thing we have ignored as young people and as young women. And COVID-19 showed us how women presidents took the situation into their hands, handled it, managed it. And I think we need more of us out there. And we need to, because at the end of the day, when we talk about a global, when we're inviting the global campaign of education, let's say I'm inviting you guys to Kenya, I will want to make you partner with the government of Kenya. And if I am seated in the board of the government of Kenya, or if I'm elected, it is quite easier to roll out these discussions, to roll out these issues, because at the end of the day, civic education is also very important and also very crucial. So one thing about civic education is that this is where now social media comes in, because of information. So young people are also moving out of the way because of information, and social media is quite powerful. It is changing a lot of, it is changing the narrative. It is a double-edged sword, and it can be used for the right things too, because sexualizing women has been done on social media, but we can now bring out women as powerful mentors, go-getters, winners, government performance. This is something we can take advantage of in the social media space. And right after this, let's drop in our LinkedIn addresses. I would want to connect with you guys as we're moving forward. I still need to be reminded about this journey that we're taking, and I'm happy to see young people across the world doing similar things that we're doing. And so that is on political participation. So I'm championing political participation in my country, and not just my country, but in Africa. And the other thing is on persons with disabilities. We have young women with disabilities, and they're also in leadership spaces as well. They're in the entrepreneurship aspect as well. They are in the civic organizations as well. Let us not forget to hold their hand once every other time that we are working on issues and we are policy making or policy championing. Let the society acknowledge that such people are there, and that we need to have spaces, provisions for them, which are quite important, because they are human rights and they're important. And then the other thing is what information. Yeah, I think those were my points on this one. And I would just like to reiterate on the political participation, because most of our issues are stemmed on our policy, implementation, and formulation. So let's keep on moving. I like how we have started. I would like to keep connecting with you as we're moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel. And then Martina?
Yes, I have to say that I agree with all the points that have been mentioned before me by the speakers, especially Angel. It's encouraging that we share very similar ways and ideas of how to tackle these issues. And it's important because the pandemic has shown us that in a span of a few months, we can lose what has taken us years to achieve. So the stakes that we have here are really high. But again, the advantage that we have in our connected age and is that we have the ability to discuss these issues on a platform such as this one that we are here today, that brings students and stakeholders from all over the world. And we realize that, listen, we're facing the same problems, maybe we can conjoin our efforts. And I would repeat the same points that were mentioned before. It's first to understand what is the problem in front of us. We need to obtain reliable and really up-to-date information about the scale and the nature of the problems, whether it is the violence crisis in and outside of schools, or the lack of the huge hit to accessibility of our education institutions. That needs to be monitored with proper research collection. And then from there, we need strategies on how to monitor and combat these issues, on how to increase accessibility of the new normal education institutions within our pandemic, and possibly and now also within the crisis of climate change. And also how to monitor and combat violence in and around schools. These strategies need to include students as the main stakeholders within the dialogue, in order to ensure proper accountability of the promises and the commitments that are being made on these strategies. And as was mentioned as well before me, and I'd like to highlight, it's that we need to join with civil society. Education institutions can't remain in their own bubble. They need to join forces together within the limited spaces that we have. And we need to try and reinstate safe spaces and support services that are aligned to our health and safety regulations. That's not impossible. That is, we have the resources to do that. We need to bring our forces together into calling efforts for that. And we need to ensure that in this process of analyzing what the problem is and doing our research, we protect the autonomy of the victims that are involved, but that we also include them in the process, and that they feel like they are empowered to take action. As was mentioned, and this is the reason why we're here, and it's the reason as well of Global Campaign for Education. Education is the most powerful tool we have in our hands to achieving true social mobility and equality in our society. And education can take the form not only of formal learning classes, but it can also be in non-formal and informal methods that enhance our capacity and our competency on discrimination and violence, and maybe take it through an intersectional approach, that we don't always just talk about gender, but we also talk about racial and religious discrimination. And by doing this, I feel that we can start removing the taboo and further empower people and them in becoming allies and to potential victims. And as Angel mentioned perfectly before me, it's not just about policy, but in the long term, we really need to see more women representation, even in academic leadership positions and in political representation. That is the way that we can see proper change. And we need to help each other out. We need to work on trainings together. We need to discuss introducing quotas into such positions. We really need to continue discussion forward, and I fully support Angel in further engaging with the speakers that we've had today, because it's really motivating. From ASUS side, within our student movements, we're really seeing a lot more women getting involved in the student movement. That's really, really cool to see, and really nice to be part of right now. And you see how student organizations are starting to take the lead in organizing various grassroots initiatives. They're taking a bottom-up approach. They're not only trying to tackle this from the top level through advocacy and policy, but also through awareness-raising campaigns, organizing student support services through their own volunteers. And in this way, they're already starting the ball rolling for public and community engagement, and really bringing in the civil society together and reminding people that education is a safe haven for all in these unstable times. And from ESU's side, and I reiterate again what Angel was saying, we're working together on these platforms. It's the Global Students Forum now that is kicking off. It's the 100 million campaign that has been there from the start, supporting student representatives to take their voice to the right table of this decision making. And so it's an effort from all points of view. It's from the bottom, grassroots initiatives, but it's also from the top that we need to work together and join forces on our solidarity. And once we do that, we really see how our efforts are multiplied then. And we hope to see an outcome of this that brings us back to the track that we were on before for social justice and equality.
Thank you so much, Martina. I want to invite Victoria from Nigeria to just give a short introduction. She was supposed to join us in the full panel discussion today, but unfortunately she has been a bit delayed. But I would very much like you to share a few words with us on your experience as a youth female advocate from Nigeria. And also if you have any urges or commitments that you would like to pose to the global civil society or world leaders that we can take on, please do share. Victoria, are you here? All right, I can see that she's still on. And time has been running quite fast, so we won't be able to go into the closing remarks from all of the panelists, but I think in the last interventions you have, some of them were very much in the tone of closing remarks, or at least leaving us with a lot of inspiration to keep on working, and also providing us with a lot of new ideas for how we can continue working together and to advance the right of girls and the right of education. And before rounding up this session, I just want to thank all of you for joining us, and a huge thanks to all of the panelists for being here together with us and sharing your perspectives. It has been really insightful, and I'm really sure that we will continue to work together to champion these issues, and that we will also be able to form new partnerships. And GCE as a movement is very committed to continue our youth engagement, and we hope to be able to work together with all of you in the future and moving on. And we are very committed to also strengthen gender perspectives within education and throughout our work, and also to urge governments to make firm and strong commitments moving forward so that we're able to tackle these challenges. And as a continuation of the International Day of the Girl, we in the Global Campaign for Education are going to publish a policy statement that will also draw upon the great discussions that we had today. And that policy statement will be published very soon. And then we're also very glad to announce that we already have a blog post that has been published from GCE and written by Angel from the African Students Union. And there are many ways to keep on engaging in these issues. And I really urge you to reach out to the panelists, but also to us in GCE to continue to engage. And I'm really sorry that there were no time for questions from all of you today in this session, but I really hope that if you sit there with a lot of questions, either to GCE or to the panelists, please reach out after the event. And lastly, we in GCE are also championing the efforts of the Global Partnership for Education, which has very recently launched a new online action, which is called Raise Your Hand, in order to both transform and to bring in finance for education of 1 billion girls in 87 countries in relation to the upcoming replenishment campaign. So if you want to engage within that effort as well, you can find more information on the Global Partnership for Education's website. And if you're in general interested in the work of GCE and youth, you can also find more information on our websites. So again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really interesting and exciting to hear from all of you, and I'm just so excited to see where this moves ahead. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Beata.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the communication.